Welcome to Let Me Tell You About My Period. I'm Liesl, a millennial nurse.
And I'm Malia, a Gen X educator, also working in healthcare and on my way to PA school.
Together, we hope to use this podcast and the related blog to destigmatize all things menstruation and to promote the health and well-being of those who have periods. We are excited to be back with our second episode, where we will be interviewing our friend Priscilla about her first period and period-related experiences. Then we'll be answering a question both Priscilla and Malia have. After that, we'll be starting an ongoing conversation about period equity by diving into a discussion about the documentary Period, End of Sentence.
So let's dive in. We are hoping to interview people from all backgrounds and walks of life about their periods and period-related experiences, and today welcome our friend Priscilla. I've known Priscilla for about 3 years and introduced her to Liesl not long ago. Both of these gals are in my inner circle and among my most trusted of friends. It's an honor to share this space with you both. So I'm here with my good friend Priscilla. Priscilla, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Priscilla. I like to hike, drink coffee. Who I am is this idea of play and as kids playing outside and playing dolls and stuff, but I think you and I, Malia, play really well together. I think about how we sit and dream, but that's like a form of play. So I was just thinking about just want people to also know that I like to really play in all areas of my life, and I think that's also what's leading me to this PA school journey is play.
Your college background majored in outdoor recreation?
Yeah, outdoor education. I just wanted to taking kids outside and playing outside, and this whole idea of play. And I also think about I had this professor called the word fun the F word, as I was writing papers to develop your dream camp or something. And a lot of people in their program be like, oh well, we're gonna add a water slide because it's fun, and he would be like, no, what's the purpose? And so the workaround, we all figured out was joy. So joy became the workaround for the word fun, and call it the F word. Then I'm also well, not everything has to, sometimes it's just fun.
You can just focus on joy.
Yeah. And just having
for the purposes of the podcast, while you were talking, I was thinking about going to camp or going down the water slide and the idea of fun. And I think a lot of young people, when they start their first period or when they get towards puberty, they're expected to stop having fun, to be grown up now, to be more adult. So tell me about your own experiences with this idea of, having fun and being joyful and playing. And a lot of us hear the word play and we think of children. But for you, when it came to your first period, were you still able to play and have fun, or were there new expectations forced upon you?
So I got my period during the summer, and it was middle school. I'm 90% sure it was the summer of 7th and 8th grade. And just for context, I do have Crohn's, and I am multicultural, and so my dad is white, native New Yorker. My mom is from the Dominican Republic, and she does have a darker complexion, or dark, just for context. And grew up playing all this stuff. It's summer, so going to the pool, hanging out with friends, and I remember one day I felt sick, and I knew about
Crohn's. That must have been really confusing, differentiating Crohn's versus period symptoms.
No, totally, because when I got the cramps, and I was vomiting, and you just feel like crap. So I remember going to my mom, and my mom, it's Crohn's. It's that's what it is. And so I have this distinct memory of being in my parents' bathroom, and I just remember I went to the bathroom in there, and there was blood in the toilet. And then,
did you know what the blood was, or were you like, oh, something is really wrong with my
Well,
Crohn's?
we thought the blood was Crohn's related, because that's the only
Even
time.
though you were between 7th and 8th grade, and you probably already had friends having their periods.
Yeah, and I took the health class, and knew about my period, but our minds just went to, oh, you're bleeding against Crohn's.
Yeah.
And so the wipe test, and then confirmed it was a period.
Okay.
And then I just remember being like, this is what's going to be like. I'm going to be vomiting and having this like Crohn's experience.
Miserable.
Right.
Yeah.
And then my mom talked to me about pads, anti-tampon.
Was your mom open in this conversation, or did she seem like hesitant, maybe embarrassed, or was she like, this is amazing, let's talk about it?
I think she was trying to be supportive. This is what happens to your body and that kind of stuff, but it really came across as kind of like, here are the facts. This is what you get. Use a pad. You take Advil.
More clinical.
Yeah. Don't use tampons. Come to me with anything. And like, that was that. Didn't get a period party or like that.
I think that's a more recent phenomenon.
The period parties?
Period parties, yeah. I think a lot of girls, when they're getting their first periods, they're given pads, but not necessarily told don't use tampons. It's more, here's what we have for you, and with the assumption that like pads are just easier. You and I talked a little bit outside of the podcast. Can you talk a little bit about why your mom was so anti-tampon?
Oh, I think it's a cultural thing for sure. My mom, growing up in Dominican Republic, the free bleed, or you like, you wear the same underwear, or I know cloth. You kind of use these
There's
other
a serious
things.
lack of equity and access to period products, sounds like.
Yeah. I remember my mom telling me about toxic tampon.
Toxic shock syndrome?
Yeah. And like, well, don't use a tampon because you're going to leave it in. You're going to think the only exception for tampons was swimming because it was the summer. I didn't use my first tampon until college, and I was sophomore. So not until I went to school in North Carolina. So like grew up all of high school. I mean, I knew what a tampon was, but I never, and the first time I actually inserted a tampon was on a backpacking trip.
Oh gosh.
In the middle of the woods. It was a 3-week backpacking trip. I got my period the first week.
Oh, wow.
And another girl was like, well, use a tampon. It's going to be easy.
In that context, it's just so much easier. Yeah.
Right. So I'm like in the middle of the
woods trying to figure this out for the first time.
Right. And like, thankfully it was like daylight. It wasn't dark. I remember, how am I going to do this in the dark? And then I have like another gal like coaching me. She was like, oh, the instructions are in there.
Sounds like it was a really supportive experience, at least.
Yes. And I remember like cardboard.
The applicator? Yeah.
Nope. Didn't even know what that was. I was like, oh, this is just more packaging. Took it up.
Oh,
so
no.
I literally took like the raw tampon and just like put it in and like trying to, wiggle it around to get it just fit right.
First experience, that must have been awful.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I feel like the applicator things, none of them are comfortable, but they make it so much easier, especially if you're not experienced with tampons.
Well, it hurt.
Oh,
and
I'm sure.
The girl was like, do you see the string? Do you see the string? And I'm like, I think so. There's a little string. And she was like, okay, like as long as you see the string, you're good. And I was like, okay. Then I remember, then it was time to take it out and taking it out. And then, we're having to collect leaves in nature. Yeah. To make sure the bears. And
it's hard enough having a period in the city.
Right.
And finding a clean bathroom. Being in the middle of the woods, I think a lot of people who don't hike and camp or don't participate in sports don't really realize that those are considerations.
Right. And it's back to like this idea of like play, right? I didn't think about period and like play. Like when I got my first period, still wanted to play with my Barbie dolls and like play.
Be a child.
Yeah. Like still do these like little kid things. And and everyone, friends are like, not friends, girls. We go to the mall now.
They're suddenly so
grown
old.
up. Yeah. Like we're grown up and we go to the mall. And I'm like, oh, I play my Barbies on a Friday night.
I remember feeling that same way, except instead of Barbies, it was my Legos. And I remember like suddenly the girls were getting their ears pierced. Some of them were wearing makeup. And I was just like, what is happening? What am I missing? The mid 1980s when I went aging myself, when I had my first period and whatnot, and we didn't have any social media or anything, but I really felt like I was missing something, and nobody was really talking about it. It was just suddenly became an us versus them, the grown-up girls versus the not grown-up girls, but we were all having periods, so really we weren't that different. But I think our families may have also been treating us differently. In my family, I think it was very much, you're still our daughter, you're still a young girl, you should still be playing with toys, where other families were like, oh, you're a woman now. But I also remember looking around at my friends who played sports. And one of my really closest friends at the time, she played soccer, and other friends were swimmers. And I just remember thinking, how do they do that with their period? But I was too embarrassed to ask.
Right.
And I would sit out swimming. I just wouldn't do it. I knew what a tampon looked like, but I didn't really understand how to use it. I was too scared to ask my mom. And so I missed out on a lot. And then like riding your bike with this big bulky pad, it was so uncomfortable.
Right. And I remember that too. Everyone's going to the pool. I would still go to the pool, but I'm in shorts and people were like, oh, like come in the water.
Right.
I put my toes in or like stay in the shallow end and, you know, like swimming.
Yeah.
And then I remember somebody told me, was like one of the kids that are always at the pool was like, oh, well, your period stops in water. I was like, well, what do you mean? Like it's constantly bleeding.
Right.
Like
somebody missed a little bit of that educational class.
And we were all kids. They're like, yeah, your period stops in the water because of sharks. Because they don't want the sharks to get the blood. And
so your body just knows there might be a shark around.
Yeah.
Time to stop bleeding. That was the case. Then why wouldn't like your period stop when you're camping to stop the bears?
Right.
That's
and
so funny.
They were trying to like obviously encourage me to get in the pool because I was like.
Part of me wonders if they really believe that, or if they were just saying it to get you in the pool. Because I do feel like, because in a lot of families, and when I was younger, these were things we didn't talk about. And so you like filled in the gaps yourself.
Right.
And sometimes not correctly. We didn't have the internet at our fingers. And even if we did, you know, there's so much false information on the internet too. I mean, sometimes we fill in the gaps with things that just like don't even make sense. Or it's so illogical.
Right. And I remember that was a lot of it. I mean, we had, you know, the family computer and all that stuff, but also like my parents' kids, you should be outside playing. And, you know, when you're outside all day in the neighborhood, what do you guys do? You tell stories, you fill in the gaps, and you come up with these like your period doesn't go in the water, or wasn't one to like, you know, swim, or like, you know, I would read a book or do more slower activities on my period. And then it was also interesting, you know, I would like go to my mom about cramps or, you know, I had a headache, and she was really, you drink this tea, more of this like holistic herbal, we call, you know, the potions essentially. But like when I got into high school, I had really bad anemia. Okay. So my periods were...
Was that part of your Crohn's initially?
So yes, I've always been like somewhat anemic because of the Crohn's. And then once I started getting periods, and you know, mine were heavy. I remember like getting my period in the middle of the night, right? And like waking up, blood in the sheets and all that stuff. And then would get really tired coming home from school. And, you know, sleeping till noon on the weekends. Like I think at first mom was like, okay, this is like teenage, whatever. But then it just kept happening. And then whatever, went to the doctor, did blood work, and was like, oh, Priscilla's like anemic. And then the doctor was having her periods. Yeah. And I'm also the type of kid that like to let my mom do all the talking and like all that at the doctor's office. And mom was, you know, periods and all that. And they're like, anemia. A lot of it was diet. So, you know, they're like, make sure she like eats a steak, or, you know, cook out of the cast iron and more diet focused. You know, if this keeps going on, we have to look into more other options.
Infusions and things like that. Little PSA for our listeners. This is not a medical podcast. This is not medical advice. Do not take any iron supplements or other medications or things of that nature without consulting your own doctor. Back to our scheduled programming. Throughout, you know, your period having years, has Crohn's played a part in your period or vice versa?
Once I got to college, it was fine.
Which makes sense because your hormones do start to not flatten out, but they start to stabilize when you're like late teens, early college age. I think that's a little somewhat common that things kind of get better around then.
You know, in high school, everybody was getting on birth control to help with their periods. So like that was common, was everyone was taking the pill. Yeah. And I mean, I remember like being with friends and, oh, it's 6 o'clock. I have to like take the little white pill. I knew from the jump to never ask my mom for birth control. Didn't get on birth control until I moved to Oregon.
Do you think it would have made a difference for you looking back? I mean, hindsight's always 20/20 and all that.
Right. I guess I really don't know. Like, I mean, my periods weren't that, it was just like the bleeding, I think. And then just like, you know, the fatigue, you know, and I felt like as the week went on, you know, the cramps did like subside. Right. I just remember like, you know, being on birth control was the thing to be on. And everyone was like, you know, all these parents were sending off on it. And my mom made it really clear, like, oh, just because, you know,
not in our house.
Yeah, like again, because that means you're having sex. And I think that was the next thing was, oh, periods, sex, you can get pregnant.
Right. Did your mom have a talk with you about pregnancy and like pregnancy prevention and all that? Or was it more like when you started your period, here's how to handle your period, and then we're going to ignore all of this?
Yeah, it was like, here's your period, here's what you do, and don't have sex. Yeah. Or like very much like not have sex. Also, my mom would say, well, I didn't immigrate, so my daughter can get knocked up at 16.
So you had a lot of pressure.
Not in my house. house. Also for my mom, there was this pressure because she left and married. She's in New York. She married up. Like she also had this image to like maintain the outside world of being this immigrant mom, that her kids weren't like those other kids.
Sure.
Obviously there was like no dating, had my little crushes, but didn't go on like dates or anything like that.
Still anti-tampon.
Yeah. Or like, you know, you can use a tampon for things like swimming, but even, you know, like in gym class.
And as soon as you're done swimming, back to a pad.
Yeah. You like take it out. And even swimming in gym class, I mean, I felt like I just kind of put the pad in.
So lucky in gym class in high school. My school had a pool. And so you were going to swim at some point in PE. And I was just terrified because I didn't know how to use a tampon. I was too embarrassed to ask my friends. I was too embarrassed to ask my mom. My mom didn't use tampons. And I'm definitely not going to ask the PE teacher. So I just prayed that my period would come either right before or right after swim was done. And it did, thank goodness, because I don't know, I probably would have faked sick.
I mean, when it was like, you know, your ground non-swimming sports, I felt like, you know, I put the pad in and I just did the gym class. I just toughed it out. When it came to swimming, I felt like same thing, you know, I was like hoping it wouldn't get it.
It definitely,
or I would like sit out.
Yeah. Going back to the idea of play, I feel like having a period really interfered with my ability to play. I feel like girls now, there's so many different options for how to deal with your period. Both of our moms probably still would have been like, here's a pad. Don't use a cup. Don't use a cup. Don't use a disc. Don't use a tampon, right? But having those options, I think would have made a big difference. You know, tampons were around and I think cups were starting to become available, but I hadn't heard of them at that point. I didn't know anybody using anything like that. And the only girls that were using tampons were like the girls going to the mall and with their ears pierced and all their makeup and everything.
Right.
Everybody else was like using pads. The sensation of the pad, and it's so big and bulky. Even the smaller ones at that point felt big and bulky. I would really think, do I want to go to that birthday party? Do I want to go ride my bike? Do I really want to go play basketball? Am I going to this roller rink? Because I'm uncomfortable and at some point I'm going to have to change this pad. And it was constantly on my mind. And it definitely interfered with my ability to enjoy myself.
Well, I remember my mom saying, you're out, you get your period, you always fold a little toilet paper, or she would make sure I have one in my backpack, whatever. Or like you go to the school nurse and all that. But, you know, I remember even to this day, I still use the, you know, I fold the little toilet paper from out.
You do what you got to do.
Right. It's interesting though, because when I got my period, I would do a lot more like home, still play Sims, but I would like play Sims on my computer. Or like I turn to video games or turn to this, you know, have a friend come over and like more playing that way versus.
Didn't want to go to my friend's house while I was on my period.
Oh, yeah.
I have to navigate their bathroom. And what if they don't have a trash can in there and I don't want to come out like holding this pad wadded in paper.
Oh my gosh, I remember my mom telling me how to like dispose of a pad. So I have two brothers at home and that was the big thing.
They know you had your period? Did they know what periods were?
I think they knew what periods were. You know, again, the very basic, like it happens once a month, you just bleed.
Yeah.
Me and my younger brother, Sammy, have always been really close. And so I think Sammy can tell when I'm on my period because I feel like he would make like comments when I would, oh, you're just on your period. It's like, you're cranky or something. Just because me and my brothers all shared a bathroom. I had to, and Jack and Sammy like couldn't know or something. It was like some weird,
very secretive.
Yeah, and that was another thing. My mom was like really into like a
mother
daughter thing.
Kind of like bury it in the trash.
Literally, so you take the toilet paper.
Even though I had a sister, I was the oldest. She was 2 years behind me, but yeah, because my sister was younger and my brother was a lot younger, like I had to like hide the evidence of this very natural thing that happens to half the population.
Folding the pad in a bunch of toilet paper and shoving it at the bottom. You know, maybe.
And then my mom would be mad about how much toilet paper we went through.
Right. And so I'm just like,
you couldn't win.
You know, same thing if I'm out in public, my mom, you know, they have the little trash cans for the period and that's where the pads go. And it's funny because now I'm an adult and I'm at my house. I just throw it in. I just put it in the trash. I don't bother even folding it up, even though I live with a man.
But also very culturally based. Like if you look at the U.S. as a whole, I don't want to say the U.S. is homogenous. It's definitely not. But, you know, the U.S., no matter where you are, we're still way more open about these things than, say, India, which Lisa and I will talk about later, where, you know, a lot of men just don't even know what a period is, and it's very secretive, and we have a ton of privilege, but we also only know what we know, right? We only know our own experience.
I remember when I lived I had two roommates, and this is lockdown, and we were making our frozen margaritas and you just yap all day because we're all
trapped at home together.
Right. And somehow, because all our periods, again synced up. Someone's like, oh, I got my period, and I'm like, crap, I'm gonna get mine in 2 days. We're all like synced up. We're on the couch drinking our frozen margaritas, and somehow we just talk about periods and our like experiences, whatever. And then I remember like my roommate saying, you know, we're all comparing our like PMS symptoms and how there's up and downs, and some women have, some women don't have. What makes sense, what we don't know. One of them was like, oh, anytime my body is weird, it's a PMS symptom, and it could be
something totally different.
Right. That's also interesting because, and as somebody's going into medicine and I like want to pursue like women's health when it comes to PMS symptoms, like, yeah, we know about like the cramps and low back pain, and some people vomit, but also you don't get the same symptoms every month. Maybe like one time I got a migraine, never had a migraine. My first migraine, literally thought I was gonna die, and I was like, crap, I'm gonna get a migraine every month right before my period. Nope, it was a one-time thing, never again.
I wish it was a one-time thing for me. My first year and a half, 2 years, I didn't really have a lot of symptoms, but then once I did start having PMS, it was so bad I had to take time off from school, and my mom would give me her migraine medicine because it was the only thing strong enough to take care of my cramps. It wasn't even really taking care of the cramps, it was just making me sleep through them, but it was so severe. It's interesting to me the range, like you said, of symptoms and severity that we go through. I mean, we could use the same products, we could have the same length of cycle, we could have all these other things that are in common, but then our symptoms leading up to our period or the first few days could be so dramatically different. And I think that makes it really difficult in healthcare to treat PMS and PMDD, especially when you have a complication like Crohn's. Then your doctor's got to figure out, is this Crohn's or is it period related or is it both or something else randomly? It's just so complex, and I think that that's not talked about enough.
Right. And I think also the research, because like, you know, now we live in the age of TikTok and Instagram and all social media, and you know, and I'm sure you've seen those, like, you drink this tea on your little face, right, and you should be eating these grains and it's going to help your symptoms, but obviously that doesn't work for everybody.
Well, and there's also the problem of anybody could make a TikTok.
Well,
right?
yeah.
So you have these random people, I hate to say it, but mostly men, who like are trying to tell women about their periods and what they should and shouldn't do, and it's like wildly off base, like not even a hint in reality. Lately, it's, you know, the algorithms that are listening to us, whatever. I've been seeing a lot of these stitched videos where it's some random white dude who is like talking about periods and what his wife should and shouldn't do, or his daughter should or shouldn't do, and then it's usually a female OBGYN comes in to like correct.
Yeah, I just think, like, you know, when we were getting periods, like, you know, we were on MySpace. I'm
so glad social media.
Right. And like, you know, I had MySpace and Facebook, but, you know, no one was posting on their, at least none of my friends, Facebook friends, like, I got my period. Like, I'm gonna make a Facebook post. But I think about like videos of things on I only use Instagram, not in TikTok, but whatever the algorithm or robots are showing me, it's always, I don't want to be mean, but it's always like the white crunchy ladies take my class on how to like
heal your
hormones, whatever, with the moon cycle and all this. And it's just always just the white lady who shops at Whole Foods,
Erewhon,
or whatever. Like, and it's like, one, I mean, I'm not going to take, you know, med advice from something like that, but also it's always a white lady. That there's, you know, non-white people who are doing that. But on my end, I always just see like and I scroll, like, another white lady who has no medical training, who's like comment.
And also assumes that their experience applies to everyone. As we said, there's such a diverse array of symptoms and experiences. And going back to like talking to about your mom growing up in DR, access to supplies, access to education. You know, Lisa and I are going to talk a lot about access to supplies and education in India. We get stuck in our own little bubbles and assume everybody else is experiencing the same thing because we don't talk about these things enough in a genuine way.
Right. And if those teas worked, well, everybody would be buying whatever
your
tea.
Doctor would be telling you to take it. Yeah.
Like everybody would be buying the tea off of Instagram or making whatever. But like, that's the thing. I feel like everyone's different. I know a lot of my friends who played sports. I remember this one girl telling me at camp, and we were like in high school, and she was like, oh, I don't get a period. And I was like, what do you mean you don't get a period? You're like we're 16.
Right. That's problematic.
Well,
potentially.
Yeah. And she was told, I think I must have got my period or something, and just talking about it, she was just like, oh, because I play sports. And the doctors were like, when you play a lot lot of sports.
I mean, she must have been playing at like an elite level.
Well, yeah, she was like,
I mean, some girls don't get their periods until 16, 17, 18, but that's not as common. But, Olympic athletes often don't get periods.
Right. And yeah, something about like how she, plays all these sports and, she got a period, whatever, when 13, whatever, and had it, that it went away because apparently like all these sports and how she was, remember like, oh, that must be nice. You don't have to,
right.
Like we're in summer camp crushes down this, I was at the pool and do I go in the pool in my little shorts and my swim shorts? And like, she's just not, I think I was just jealous, right? Like not having the worry or like the back of my head of the self-conscious of, well, everybody knows I'm on my period.
Or what if I have an accident? What if it comes when I'm like wearing my white shorts that my mom insisted I buy? Like,
or I remember this one time I was in high school in class. I got my period in class. And I also knew, my mom also taught me in school when I was on my period to bring a little sweatshirt to tie my right waist until I could go to the nurse's office. I remember I was in history class. I got up and I looked down and I just see like blood on the chair, tie the sweatshirt, class was over. And I just remember like, well, what do I do? Do I clean the blood or I just leave it?
I had
like
the same experience.
Well, there's no tissues. I don't have anything. And I remember trying to like try to like rub it off, like whatever. And I just rushed out of class and I went to the nurse's office. I got my period. Right. So it's always like Susan, the school mom. She's like, what do you need, honey? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't have any. She's like, do you have clothes to your gym locker? And and of course I didn't have anything because I took it home and I had to call, I can't remember if it was my mom or my grandpa, but somebody brought me clothes to school, then I went on the rest of the day, but everyone knew I was wearing jeans this morning and now I'm wearing like sweats. So everyone knows I got my period because my clothes are different. Yeah. And even though nobody cares, but you're just so like wrapped up in this like self-conscious or, like wearing the big sweatshirts, like nobody can know that I felt like I went through like a heavy sweatshirt and legging phase, like you're trying to like cover up. I think I wished we talk more like, yes, the why behind periods and like the health education, but again, just like
the day-to-day realities of navigating life.
Yeah. Like how do you go through life or like being in high school? Like high school is already hard enough. Like how do you go through high school with like being on a period, dealing with the self-consciousness or, like what do you do when you're like, summer camp?
Thankfully, more and more schools are making period supplies accessible. I don't have the statistic in front of me now, but Liesl and I, again, are going to talk about this in a bit. There are some states where period supplies are free to high schoolers. If that had been more readily available, it would have made it so much easier for both of us.
Right, because I had to go to the school nurse, or you borrow it from you take it from a friend.
Well, and then it's like, if you needed to get up in the middle of class, is your teacher going to let you go? What do you say? I was not brazen enough to be like, I got my period. But I knew girls who were, and usually they would say it on to like irritate the male teacher, who would then be like, okay, go, but I was not that person. I was going to sit there and just suffer and then tie my sweatshirt around my waist.
I learned I can, at an early age, once I got diagnosed with Crohn's, I can use Crohn's to get out a lot of things.
Of course.
Because it was also like in my school file that all my teachers know I had Crohn's. If I had to go to the bathroom, you have to let me go to the bathroom. No questions asked.
So weirdly, in some ways, having Crohn's made having a period at school easier.
Yeah, because I get to go to the nurse whenever I wanted to, just to kind of use this like Crohn's card. And then I used it in college. My teachers I would like, email professors like, can't come to class today, I'm in a Crohn's flare.
Right.
And they're like, oh my gosh, like take care, like let us know what you need, you get an extra whatever on that assignment, extra couple of days.
I can't come to class, I'm having period cramps. It would have been like,
suck it up.
Yeah, suck it up, take some Advil, get yourself a hot heating pad or something and come to class.
Right. Yeah. Even though I wasn't in a Crohn's flare.
Right.
I was just on my period and I just didn't want to deal with
something that 50% of the population has. It's totally normal. But even in this day and age, a lot of people are still weirded out about it.
Or we're just not, like, oh, I got my period. Do you track yours on your phone or like the whole cycle tracking?
I've never tracked it on my phone. And I actually, when I did track, it was just on a paper calendar. I was so irregular for years that I just stopped tracking.
So I like track mine on Apple Health. I've been doing it for years. It's interesting. I am regular. I'm always like a 28 day, right at 28, 5-day cycle. I've been like that since I've been tracking it.
I wish I was.
And it's just been interesting, I guess, to see the data, because I also try to put things like, you know, my cramping the day.
Sure.
And really for me, it's just like a log to see like how my periods changed like over the years. And that's been like looking back at that like early data versus now, it's just been interesting to see.
If you're tracking that religiously, then it's going to be really helpful to you as you get older and get more towards menopause. And like as your periods start to change, I think you'll have a better sense that, oh, this is like perimenopause, where I was like, what the hell is going on with my body? Like, why is my body acting crazy? I haven't had a period in like 7 years, but because I hadn't been tracking anything, not even symptoms, to me it was like, oh, this is just another weird thing. Where even if I had been tracking this irregularity, the last 2 years things were so irregular, it might have clued me in that I was like entering perimenopause.
Right, if you had the data.
Yeah.
So I remember my mom going through menopause and just always having these hot flashes, and it was like snowing in New York, and she's like, I'm having a hot flash, and like driving with the windows down. I'm like crazy. And I'm just like,
thankfully I've been very lucky and not had to deal with any of that. I don't know why. Maybe it's just my genetic makeup. Maybe it's psychological influence. I read an article years and years ago, well before I ever got even close to perimenopause, about these communities where those symptoms just don't exist. I want to say one of the communities was in Japan maybe, and the women went through menopause without ever having hot flashes, without ever having weird symptoms, and I never experienced any of that. So I find it so interesting when my friends do have hot flashes or things like that, and I don't want to know what that's like, but at the same time I feel like there's something wrong with me, even though nothing's wrong with me. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I got hot flashes on my period, and I remember getting that in high school, and like that was, you know, I'm already dealing with this, and I'm like having a hot flash, and I can't sleep, and I'm opening the window, and I'm going to my mom, and she would like make a little joke like, oh, like me, like mommy, turned into this joke of I'm having menopause. And so I would like go to my mom, I'm having menopause, and she would know like hot flashes, you know, all that kind of stuff. To this day, we like, when I call her, she's like, don't worry, I'm not having menopause today.
Did your dad know that you had your period when you first got it?
I don't know when I first got it, but like I feel like he knew.
Right.
I think it was a lot of the similar, like the mood changes, the sleepiness, the like.
But you weren't like explicitly like, Dad, I'm a woman now.
No, because my mom was like, you don't
talk about that with the men anymore.
Yeah, like your dad doesn't need to know. That's just like a mom and a grandma
my
type
mom
thing.
told my dad, and my dad told my grandma, and my grandma made a huge deal out of it, and I just wanted to hide. I didn't want anybody to talk about it or like celebrate it or whatever. I just wanted to like move on with my life.
And I remember this one time I like was going to my grandma's house, and I was sleeping over because I was over my grandma's house a lot. And my mom was like, you know, if you get your period, just like ask grandma. I'm sure she like has something or something. And I got my period, so I like, grandma, like, and she gave me a pad. And
was it a pad, like a regular pad like we would see today? So one of my grandmas had the old fashioned like belt with clips that clip onto the pad.
No, I just remember it was like an overnight. It was one of those, but it was like one of those like, felt like it was a grandma pad. It was like the big, you know, with the wings and the extra long, extra 10 strength,
extra everything,
right? Just for a night or two, like I can tough it out.
I never had to ask my grandma for a pad because I would have been horrified if she'd handed me like the belt with the clips and all of that. My grandma had regular pads and tampons in her bathroom as well. I think one of my cousins maybe left them there, or maybe my aunt, and my grandma just sort of like would replenish it periodically. But she kept those good old fashioned 1950s supplies. I don't know why she kept them. No one used them.
Funny. And it was also, I'm also thinking about now too, just we all like sync up as women. And, you know, I went to college in North Carolina. It was a small Christian school in the South. There was an all women's dorm. And I swear we all synced up on a period. And you have like 150 women living together.
Science says that's not a thing, but I know so many.
Oh, it's a thing.
But as Lisa and I discussed in our first episode, real period blood wasn't even used to test real period products.
Of course.
Until, like 2 years ago at OHSU here in Portland. So it would make sense that they're probably not actually scientifically testing if women sync up thoroughly.
Right. I mean, even me and my mom, because when I got my period, me and my mom were like synced up, and she would tell me like, oh, I got my period. And then I would get mine like a couple of days later. And so then I felt bad for the men in our house because we have two women, and my mom and I can, you know, just the mood changes and just the like the emotion, the big feelings that comes on with being your period. I do remember though, my dad was, I think he could tell and try to be extra, you extra sweet. There was like a McDonald's not too far from the house. I remember one time I was like, he brought me like cheeseburger, french fries on a little tray upstairs, or like we had this place called Moe's, which is like Chipotle, but they don't charge you for guac. So it'd be like, oh, you want to go to Moe's? And Moe's was like, I mean, it wasn't super close to our house. So the fact that my dad was like willing to go to Moe's, I was like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna go. Felt like there was a lot of, I think he was aware. I think
supportive of it.
There was just a little extra, the little treats or the food or in this like leaving me be, like I would be in my room all day on a Saturday, or like he would let me play, my Sims forever. There was just a lot of like, I'm gonna let you chill. And
I think my dad was pretty oblivious about things like that. I was still expected to like side and go swimming and go ride my bike and all those things. I don't know if he just didn't want to hear that I was too uncomfortable, or if he was like, this shouldn't be a problem, just do it anyway. And my grandma, my dad's mom, was like, you're a woman now, celebrate your womanhood, celebrate your moon phases, which is funny because my grandma's like not hippy dippy at all, but except when it came to periods.
I remember in high school, again, everyone's on the girls with their birth control and their ears pierced. Well, then thongs.
Oh yeah.
My mom
what do you do with a period and a thong?
You're right. The thongs, and then what do you call it? The whale tail, the low-rise jeans. And, you can tell the girls, it was like the thing, like, oh, you see Sarah over there, is wearing her look. Again, like as this transition to womanhood. And again, I would watch like MTV and TRL and Britney Spears, and they're all wearing these thongs. And my mom was very clear, like, you don't wear thongs because of yeast infections. You're going to get an infection. And then I was like, well, why is Sarah and all these girls wearing these thongs? They're all going to get yeast infections. And my mom would tell me, painful, you go to the doctor, or you take like an antibiotic. And then I remember this one time me and my mom were at the mall, and I don't know if you know what wet seal is.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Okay, so we had a wet seal, and my mom and I went in there, and like they were having some sale, and asked my mom, like, I want to get a thong.
Yeah.
And my mom was like,
I bought my first thong myself. I would never ask my mom. And I realized it was very uncomfortable, but it did not ever give me a yeast infection.
My mom was like, okay, fine. You want to see what the hype is or whatever? This hot pink little skinny tooth floss thong. And I'm sure it was bedazzled. And I felt like, okay, look at me, I got my thong. And then I was like, we're like all cool and grown up and put it on. My mom was right, because it was like super uncomfortable. Okay, never again.
But that was like the style. It was like these super skinny, where it was like a piece of floss at the back.
And then my mom also told me, don't wear a thong on your period because of the infection, the rate gets higher. And also, I can't, if I'm wearing a thong, it's
virtually impossible to wear a pad with a thong.
Right.
I mean, you can, but thongs are really tampon cup, something like that.
Right. But I wasn't, doing the whale tail look or anything.
Oh,
and
gosh,
so
my mom would have been horrified if I did that.
But I remember thinking, like, all these girls on their periods, like,
I feel like we could do a whole episode just on thongs and ladies' underwear. Yeah, I never understood, if Christy is wearing a thong like every day, what is she doing on her period?
Right.
And then it never dawned on me that maybe she's using tampons, because I had never used a tampon.
Right. You got like shame or judge for using a pad, but I felt like some type of, like, oh, you like still use pads. Like that's so middle school. That's like, you did that in your first couple of cycles. Like we're grown up now. Like we're using tampons. And I'm like, oh,
that just made me feel like I needed to be even more secretive about it.
Right. And like, even in college and even like as an adult, like I use tampons. I use pads. Tampons don't work for me. I've tried all different types.
Yeah.
The different, sizes, which are the different numbers or like all that, which no one else will ever taught me.
Right.
Like small, medium, large, or 1, 2, 3, 4.
Different absorbencies and all that. Yeah.
Or like the sport kind versus their regular kind. And I'm like, aren't they all the same?
I mean, you basically, we've stuck figuring it out yourself, standing in the aisle of the grocery store, hoping nobody walks by.
Right. And same thing with pads, right? Like I remember like, oh, well, I'm going to get, so for sleeping, my mom was like, use the overnight extra big sleeping pad.
So now you can't sleep because you're super uncomfortable because you've got this between your legs.
Right.
This giant diapery pad.
And, during the day you just like use, but it was always with the wings. Mom was like, you always get the ones with the wings. To this day, as I like, go to Fred Meyer and I get the Kroger brand pads, I buy the one with the wings. I
remember when Apple first released iPads and there were so many people making jokes, iPad with wings.
Yeah. And I think think that's another thing is like,
I think the wings did make me feel more comfortable and more secure though.
Yeah.
I felt like it wasn't going to slide around. Not that they did, but like, you know, some brands were more adhesive than others. And I felt like the wings just kind of helped to keep things in place. But then again, you're not going to go swimming with a pad with wings. Right. You're, you know, if it was like your heaviest day, you might be a little more careful because what if it leaks around the side of the wing? Yeah.
Were you ever taught, like, I don't know, but I feel like in my house, my mom was, you know, on my period, cleanliness, like being clean while on your period?
No, I wasn't. But I was so worried that somebody would smell me that I was like, I would take like 2 showers a day. I would like be extra careful of making sure like I didn't have any blood or anything. I used to get in trouble for taking 2 showers a day. And my dad would be mad. Oh, the water bill is going to go up. But I was not going to tell my dad, well, Dad, I've got my period. Right. So I'd be like, oh, okay, I'll take shorter ones next time.
That was like a big thing. So like, my period, I would have to, in the morning, remember before school, even if I wasn't going to take a shower, I would essentially have to do like a little bird bath. Yeah. So the washcloth, put some, you know, regular water on, you know, not use hot. And then, you know, you wipe front to back. Yeah. But like doing that like every morning before school and, you know, and then as I'm changing, take a little toilet paper, but not to use wet wipes or whatever the summer's eve soap, because mom was like, that's going to cause infection. And
my mom was really not obsessive, but she was like very particular about stains on clothing and on towels and things. I never wanted to use a washcloth during my period because I didn't want to like stain it and have to clean it myself. She did teach me how to like clean out the period stains in your underwear, but I was like, that was bad enough. I don't want to have to do that on a washcloth too. So it was like pure water. Just stand in the shower, take care of things.
And I'm like that now. So it's funny that you bring up the smell because I am so like self-conscious that people can like smell it, and it's like because I can smell it, and I'm like, I think it smells like.
But I recently read a book about periods that we'll do a whole little mini podcast on these 2 books. But one of them said the reason you smell it is because you're the closest person to yourself. Right, which totally makes sense. But when you're growing up, you don't think that way. You think if I can smell it, obviously everyone can smell it, right? But you're the closest person to your body, and you're like the one that's reaching down and taking out the pad or the tampon or whatever. So it's like getting even closer to you as you pull it out. But that leads perfectly to our Q&A segment, which is, can other people smell your period? We'll get into that in just a second. Thank you so much, Priscilla. It's been a really great.
Of course. Always happy to have these conversations. And I think it's great that we're having these like open and honestly and playing together.
Agreed. Priscilla brought up a great question for our first Ask Flo question and answer segment. Can people smell your period? I already partially answered in my discussion with Priscilla, but let's dive in a bit deeper. I wondered specifically, can men smell when a woman is on her period? I had a male coworker once tell me that he swore he could smell periods.
First of all, what was his purpose in sharing that with you? And second, do you think you could ever tell when you were on your period?
I have no idea what his purpose was. Maybe just to like get me. I don't know. But I never tried to find out, and frankly, he made me have a bit of a complex about it. So I did some research, and essentially there is scant evidence that men or anyone can smell when a woman is on her period. The exceptions are primarily related to poor hygiene, some of which could be driven by inequity, which we'll talk about, such as poor access to products and needing to use a pad, tampon, or other materials far longer than is safe or hygienic, or due to lack of clean water, laundry facilities, and so on.
What I found was very similar. During a period, the blood and material shed is a combination of blood, uterine lining, and vaginal secretions. The hemoglobin in the blood can produce a metallic or coppery scent, and the vaginal secretions can carry naturally occurring bacteria from the body. But if there is any odor, it's usually not detectable. A strong odor is more likely to be detected in the event of a bacterial infection or poor hygiene. Have you ever been aware of the smell of someone's period other than your own before?
Not that I can recall, not even in healthcare when patients are being seen for period-related problems.
And as a nurse, I can say the only blood I've definitively smelled is the blood from a person with a gastrointestinal bleed. But that is because blood is broken down by enzymes and bacteria, which can produce odors.
Same, and that really is a totally different mix compared to period blood. This is the perfect pivot to a topic for the rest of the episode, which is period inequity. But first, I also want to come back to something I mentioned while talking to Priscilla. When you're on your period, you smell yourself because you're the closest thing to yourself. So that might make you worry that others can smell you. You're right up there changing your pad or tampon or cup, and when you're changing them, you also don't have clothing barriers between you and the odor. Unless you're being intimate with someone, no one else is that up and close with you, so they aren't likely to smell you at all. But as mentioned, the biggest issue when it comes to periods and odor relates to inequity in terms of access to products and hygiene products and facilities.
So this is a topic we plan to come back to regularly, as before mentioned. And the perfect jumping off point is a documentary on Netflix, currently at least at the time of this episode, which is titled Period, End of Sentence. It also intersects with another topic we plan to repeatedly address, which is the appearance of periods in the media. The documentary, Period, End of Sentence, which won an Academy Award for Best Documentary Short Subject in 2019, looks at period supplies and access specifically in India. But before we get into the documentary, let's discuss some socioeconomic facts relating to having periods in the United States. After all, that's where we live. A major issue when it comes to equity for people having periods is that those already experiencing poverty, houselessness, etc., are not able to access period hygiene supplies through food stamps or health insurance, even Medicaid.
Anyone who has bought pads or tampons or other products knows just how expensive it can be to buy quality products too. According to the National Institutes of Health, in 2024, the cost of pads and tampons nearly doubled over the previous 5 years, and 16.9 million menstruating women in the US live in poverty. Of those, 2/3 cannot regularly afford any menstrual products.
And this isn't just an issue of affording products. This can also be a health issue, as not being able to manage a period can lead to urinary tract infections, toxic shock syndrome, and vaginal infections. In addition, those who can't afford products or don't have access to hygiene resources may have to miss work or school, which has further socioeconomic consequences.
There was actually a point where I was extremely poor and sometimes had to choose between my groceries and taking care of my period. I can only imagine how hard it must be, or how much harder it must be for people who are even poorer or unhoused.
It doesn't help that these essential products are taxed in 28 states, while condoms and Viagra are not taxed at all in many states. Now, I can support methods of birth control as essential, but I certainly would not categorize a male enhancement drug as such.
Exactly. And for many states who do not tax these products, it's actually a very, very new thing.
Yes, most of the states that stopped taxing menstrual products only did so in the last 5 to 6 years. On average, menstruators collectively spend $150 million in the USA annually just on the sales tax for these items.
Just on the tax.
Yow.
That's crazy. I have an HSA, a healthcare spending account, through my benefits at work. And during our research for this episode, we discovered that as of 2020, with the CARES Act, period products are considered eligible for purchase through your HSA or FSA dollars.
I'm personally new to HSA. I just got one for the first time this last year. So all that's new to me. And I bet people with an HSA, even who have them already or had them already, weren't aware of this.
I'm sure a lot of people don't even know the HSA and FSAs exist. And if you're really, really poor, you might not be able to spare the dollars to contribute to that, even though it is beneficial to you. You might just not be able to see that leave your paycheck.
For sure.
A lot of people just simply can't afford it.
Yeah. So if periods can be a burden in the United States, how much more so in developing countries like India? We get a glimpse of the period situation in India in the documentary Period, End of Sentence, which you can currently watch on Netflix or YouTube. It's less than 30 minutes, so do it. This documentary, with the catchy title, was filmed with support from the PAD Project, which you can learn about at thepadproject.org. According to the PAD Project, 1 in 4 U.S. girls have missed school due to lack of access to period products. In India, those numbers are much higher. That brings me back to that catchy title, Period, End of Sentence. Because a period should only be a punctuation mark and not the reason a girl's education should end.
Absolutely. And we will have links to those resources on our blog at letmetellyyouaboutmyperiod.com. But about 10 years ago, Time magazine reported that 23% of girls in India drop out of school when they reach puberty, and 40% of schools did not, as of 2015, have separate bathrooms for female students. Not even talking about the period products. They just didn't even have separate bathrooms for female students. Not having access to privacy in bathrooms led many girls to skip school when on their periods. Furthermore, many students could not afford or had no access to sanitary pads. We'll do a future episode on period products around the world, but in India, it's very common to use rags such as cut up old clothing. It's also common for girls and women to dig holes to bury the rags or to simply toss them in an empty area where other waste is also tossed. Lack of sanitation services is its own major health concern.
When LA teacher Melissa Burton learned about many of these challenges while attending a session hosted by the UN Commission on the Status of Women, she was, quote, dumbstruck by her own ignorance and decided to do something about it. She enlisted students from her school's Girls Learn International chapter to tackle this problem.
What I really love about this is that she really let the students take charge. One student, I apologize if I've mispronounced the name or any names throughout this.
Both of us.
Claire Sliney said that they decided to do something to show the issues related to periods in India rather than just talk about it. And the idea to install a pad making machine in the village of Kathakera, India, was born and became the subject of the documentary.
Yes, Claire and Melissa's school raised over $55,000 to install a machine to manufacture sanitary pads and to teach the women of the village to run the machine and distribute and sell the pads themselves. The school partnered with Action India, which continues to install such machines around the country and has spread to additional countries as well.
Interestingly, the machine was actually invented by a man, Arunachalam Muruganathan. I practice this, I promise. Muruganathan, despite being in a country where men were largely ignorant of anything period related. India is a country with deeply rooted stigmas around periods, so the fact that a man was so integral to this project is interesting to me.
Very interesting. And yet men stand to benefit from supporting the other half of their nation.
Absolutely.
The machine is cost effective and empowers women. The pads cost about 5 cents per pad to make and are made with natural, locally sourced materials. The women not only gain work skills, but they also gain education around periods and learn all aspects of making, marketing, selling, and educating around the pads. I love that the women decided to name their brand FLY, Fly, and said it's because they want women to soar. One of my favorite aspects of the documentary, Malia, was seeing the girls light up as they learn how to make and sell their products to other women in the community. I particularly liked hearing a young woman named Sneha talk about how she planned to use money from making and selling the pads to fund her police training and thereby increase her economic and social freedom.
I also love seeing the girls and women smiling and getting excited about how this could change their futures for the good. Throughout the documentary, it is clear that there are deep divides in the community about period-related knowledge. The girls and women are often shy or embarrassed, but also curious and interested to know more, while most of the men are either totally unaware of what periods are or are too embarrassed to talk about it. Some of the barriers to accessing pads are related to cultural stigmas, with some of the girls stating they have difficulty even buying pads when they can afford them because, and I quote, there are always men around, with one person stating, menstruation is the biggest taboo in my country. Arunachalam, the inventor of the machine, is hugely supportive of improving the lives of girls in his community. He says, the strongest creature God created by God in the world is not the lion, not the elephant, not the tiger. It's the girl.
We won't get into this, but I would love to know more about this man and how he developed these values in the
Same.
context of growing up in India.
Yeah, same.
I think I might have a crush on him. Now, Malia, tell me a little of what you learned about the maker of this documentary.
So this documentary is the director's first project right out of film school.
Wow.
So it's pretty incredible that she won an Oscar for it. In an interview with Youth to the People, and again, I apologize if I mispronounced this, Rekha Zatabchi said that making this documentary has forever changed her own relationship to her period. Just 6 months before filming it, she said she was buying tampons and the only clerk at the store was a male, and she felt embarrassed, or in her own words, mortified, and wanted to get out of the store as fast as possible.
An experience I think a lot of girls and women are familiar with, being embarrassed to buy period products with men or boys around.
And a lot of women are embarrassed even if it's another woman.
For sure.
So Rekha went on to say that making the documentary helped her to basically own her period and to own being a woman who uses pads and tampons. She said the periods make women strong in many ways, which I think is evidenced by the documentary. You do see a huge shift in a lot of these women and girls. She said the documentary is about, quote, taking control of your own body, shedding stigma, creating and providing access to basic sanitary products. And that for her, the purpose of filmmaking really is to take down walls and to educate people, but to do it not by feeding people medicine, but by sharing character and art with audiences.
Shedding stigma, pun intended? I don't know.
I hadn't even noticed that.
But I do think she succeeded in her goal.
I agree.
And considering the socioeconomic impact of periods in India, we read a couple recent articles on this subject from the Palgrave Handbook of Critical Menstruation Studies, and we'll cite these on our website. The first article, entitled Menstrual Justice, a Missing Element in India's Health Politics, highlights how health policies in India have primarily addressed women's health exclusively as it pertains to childbearing and population control. This means they do not address things like menstruation and menopause. In other words, they do not account for a lot of women. Unfortunately, socioeconomic disparities in India affect women disproportionately and result in nutritional and medical discrepancies that affect women's menstrual health far beyond baby making. The author suggests that in order for policies to be effective, they not only need to acknowledge women's health across the menstrual cycle, menarche through postmenopause, but also address the sociocultural stigma surrounding periods, which limits progress.
The other article we read was Bleeding in Public, Rethinking Narratives of Menstrual Management from Delhi's Slums. The article acknowledges the unique challenges of menstrual hygiene management in the crowded, water supply deficient slums. It focuses on the reality that hygiene is considered an individual pursuit, yet in the absence of sanitation infrastructure, it becomes a public issue, which is shown in the documentary a couple of times, I think. However, it also recognizes that the physical and biomedical aspects of sanitation cannot be considered alone when addressing period hygiene in India. WASH, or Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene programs, are not always sensitive to how Indian women are affected by their particular environment, such as how different period management might be for a woman living in a more traditional village versus an informal slum settlement. For example, varying access to water, more or less space for privacy, different work demands, and varying applications of gender-based traditions. Nor do WASH programs account for cultural ways in which Indian women value learning information, such as intergenerationally, which again is evident in the documentary. To put it simply and rather obviously, one solution or size does not fit all. And on that note, we actually also came across some really interesting information about periods in Scotland. I didn't realize this. I had heard about this, but didn't realize it was so recent. In Scotland, in August 15th, 2022, the Period Products or Free Provision Scotland Act of 2021 came into force. Have you heard of that, Lisa?
Oh, never. Honestly, I don't hear much about Scotland, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, although the documentary is about India, I think this is still relevant because Scotland does have a significant number of people living in poverty, as the US does as well. But in 2022, they essentially made period products free and for everyone that needs them. There's a requirement that these products be accessible and free. There is more information at myperiod.org.uk about a program called Pick Up My Period. The program initially rolled out in schools and sports programs, but now it's become much more widespread. You can also find information about that if you're in Scotland on the Scottish Government website, which I will link in our blog.
I look forward to reading more about that too. And it'll be interesting to see if other parts of the UK and Europe beyond start following suit.
And I would love for us to come back to this idea, or to come back to the machines in India and see how that changes over time.
Absolutely. It's always helpful when you recognize a problem. It's important to recognize a problem, but then it's also important to identify what solutions have been created and are those ones that could be copied and further advanced.
But also, as the articles that we read discuss, that not one solution does not
Absolutely.
fit everyone. So what works in India with these machines might not work in Scotland or
Great
somewhere
point.
else. And there's so many cultural aspects to this as well. In India, in the documentary, you'll see and hear that there's a lot more secrecy about periods than there are in the United States, even though in the United States, we do still have a lot of secrecy about periods.
Absolutely. And we do have like sex education, which at least in the village that's featured in the documentary, it seems like the boys they talk with, non-existent. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us for the second episode of Let Me Tell You About My Period. Please check out our blog at letmetellyyouaboutmyperiod.com or find us on Instagram and Let Me Tell You About My Period at Let Me Tell You About My Period and YouTube at About My Period. You'll find blog posts, resources, reading recommendations, and more. For episode 3, projected to be released in June, Pride Month, we are turning to periods and the LGBTQIA plus community and period-related issues, specifically for transgender men. If you are a transgender man who either menstruates now or has in the past, we'd love to interview you. Please get in touch at letmetellyyouaboutmyperiod@gmail.com or through our blog. We would love to use your name, but can also keep you anonymous if you prefer.
And with that, join us in supporting Period
Equity!